Alright guys, we are going to take a look here. This is going to be the example games. We are testing out our green and white post deck. I'm not going to keep butchering the name there, but as usual I've recorded the first 3 games that I played with this deck. This is technically going to be the first 4 I did. Play one game against a blue-black control deck that I really wished had saved properly because it was a really awesome matchup. I did lose it. And it just was a great way to show that, when you're playing an opponent who is very heavy on the control aspect, he was playing, a very heavy non-creature package of creature kill spells. So it just showed that when you have that kind of build up to your deck, it really does a good job of shutting something like this down. Because it can keep the Aurochs in check, it can keep your Crushers off the board, and so on. So, opening hand, game 1. Only 1 land, and this is a very risky hand to keep, but I did want to keep it because of the fact that we do have this crop rotation available to us. I really, you look at this hand and you would think it's not good. There's only 1 land available to you, but some of the things in this hand really kept me thinking that I was going to keep this. And that was basically based on the fact that we had so many mana options available to us. The crop rotation allows us the turn 1 play into GWPost. Then that opens up, the room for if we top deck into a second GWPost, we're now sitting at 2 mana and we didn't lose anything. Worst case scenario, we do have Expedition Map. If we top deck into a forest, then we do have Wall of Roots and we can gain extra mana that way. And we also have Prophetic Prism. We just have options available to us. So this is a very risky thing to keep. If you're playing in a tournament setting, I don't necessarily recommend keeping a hand like this unless you're very familiar with the deck. GWPost, at least most versions, do still run crop rotation, so it's something to keep in mind. Really, if you're going to keep a hand like this, just be aware of what your deck is made up of. Composition and odds and stuff like that. It's very important. So, keeping this hand, I'm going to start off, like I said, forest down into crop rotation, which I will sacrifice the forest and search out that GWPost. And at this point in time, like I said, you're kind of really hoping. This hand becomes infinitely better as well if you're on the draw. Here we are on the play, so that is just makes it even a worse hand to keep in reality. So I know I am keeping it and telling you that it's a bad hand to keep, but at the same time, you got to trust me on this. It's very risky. And it will, spoiler alert, work out in my favor, but that's okay. So did top deck into a second land, which is great. Unfortunately, it is not a green, so we don't hit into this Wall of Roots, which would have been kind of the ideal play. Even a GWPost, I think, would have been a better draw there as opposed to a Plains. That's alright though, we still get the 2 mana available to us. We can put down the Prophetic Prism, and that opens up an opportunity to draw an extra card, gives us yet another chance to draw into land. You see we do top into another crop rotation, and because of the Prophetic Prism and that play there, we can actually use that on the next turn and sacrifice off this Plains if necessary to find another land, another GWPost, something like that. Prophetic Prism is definitely something I know I've talked about a lot, very essential in decks, even if you're running monocolor, just because of the fact that it allows you that opportunity to change all this colorless land into something more useful. So I do use crop rotation there, sacrifice off the Plains in order to get a second GWPost, and I am going to use that to put the Expedition Map into play. It is a little bit haggard, I guess is the word. I'm not really sure, but it's not as great as it could be. It would have been even more ideal there if we had been able to sacrifice this map in the same turn. Needless to say, it is going to at least give us an opportunity to find another GWPost on the following turn, and give us, some opportunities to get a Crusher or the Aurochs Herd into play. Wall of Roots comes down. We are going to tap out to use the GWPost for GWPost. Wall of Roots can come down. So we are sitting on, now a total of 6 mana, and we do have the Wall of Roots as well. It's going to finally give us a second option for getting some green mana out there, if we do top deck into something like Reap and Sow and want to double off that green. So here I make a bit of a misplay. My opponent is playing mono black control, so when he attacks with this Chittering Rats, I decided not to block with the Wall of Roots. I was assuming that and this is definitely a misplay on my part, I had assumed, let me back up a second. If you're familiar with mono black control, a lot of their spells that are like not direct kill, we're not talking edicts, we're not talking things like Doomblade, I'm talking spells that kill creatures through -X abilities. A lot of those come in the form of things like Echoing Decay, where it is a -2/-2, and that's kind of a standard number for mono black control. So here I made a bit of a misplay. I decided not to block with Wall of Roots because had I was assuming here that my toughness was 4 on the Wall of Roots, and had I blocked with the Chittering Rats, he would have been able to play something like even Dead Weight and kill that off, and I really wanted the extra mana source. So I decided not to block, and this was a bit of a misplay. As you'll see here, he does decide to tap out to Ninja in the Shinobi, which hurts big time. I have to choose 2 cards to get rid of. Obviously, one is going to be a Crusher because I have double. Auroch Herd was something that maybe, in hindsight, I think might have been a mistake. Getting the Auroch Herd is really great. It's very important to the green post decks because of the fact that it gives you that ability to find more and more Auroch Herds. Especially, I know he's got another Chittering Rats that's going to come down on his next turn, and that's really stalling out my draw. So if I can use things like Auroch Herd to grab other copies of it and get more creatures going, it kind of makes up for the fact that I'm not drawing a card because I'm still tutoring up an extra card every turn. So I think in hindsight, maybe getting rid of both Crushers would have been the better play here. I was trying to, and I do this a lot and probably overvalued this play, but I was trying to keep the Crusher in hand because a lot of times in, especially, more casual environments like the tournament practice room, or even the casual room, if you're playing Crushers, as soon as that hits the board, you're going to put your opponent on tilt. All they see is this 8/8 guy. They know what the Annihilator ability is, and that Sacrifice 2 is very, very brutal. So usually if you put that out against a non-experienced player, it can put them on tilt, and all of a sudden all they're thinking is, how do I get rid of this Crusher? So that comes down. It also is going to prevent him from using the Chittering Rats here. I do empty my hand entirely thanks to drawing into that GWPost. Now if he puts out Chittering Rats, I don't actually lose a card draw here. That's going to be very helpful as well. So, Reap and Sow comes out, obviously going to use it. I finally have an option for the second green off Wall of Roots, and I filter the other through the Prism. Just killing off a land of his there, not very important. Against something like GWPost, the land destruction part of Reap and Sow is very important, but this is just a generic thing. If you have the extra mana and nothing else to do with it, I always recommend using that second Entwined ability to kill off a land no matter what they're playing. If you got the extra mana and you're not doing anything with it, there's no point in just leaving it on the field. Taking away one land could be the make or break here. In Mono Black Control, they really look for those swamps for bumping up things like Tendrils of Corruption and just Corrupt in general. That's a lot of the old school Mono Black Control decks use that as their finisher, so if you can kind of stall that by getting rid of some swamps, it's going to benefit you in the long run. So Crusher comes down, he decides actually to sacrifice both of his rats, which was something I kind of wasn't expecting. I kind of expected one land and one rat. If you look at the combined ability of the Annihilator on the Crusher and the Reap and Sow, you really can get a decent amount of destruction control going on right here. So he does Tendrils on the wall, which does kill it because of the fact that I use that one extra mana to produce the Entwined on the Reap and Sow. I still would do that again given the hindsight thing. If I went back in time and I did this all over, I still would make the same play. I do think you benefit from getting rid of that extra swamp. His Tendrils did 1 less damage anyways, he had to wait for it. Getting rid of those lands, especially, like I said, if you have the extra mana and nothing else to do with it, is very beneficial. So draw into Hobble, which is great. It's mostly a cantrip in this deck, but it can get us some definite decent plays against any kind of heavier aggro format. He's now in a situation he's got no creatures, he's starting to sacrifice lands to the Crusher, and this game is pretty much over. Even at 8 life, if he was at more, it still wouldn't have made much of a difference. The Crusher would have come down, taken out those last 2 lands, and you basically reset his entire game board. And that's going to put that at an end. So usually I kind of splice these together, but this time around I am going to just load up these games all in the same one. So bear with me here. This is the second game we had. Opening hand's pretty good. We have 3 lands available to us. We also get 2 options for Overgrown Battlements, which is great. They're going to come down, and each one is going to make the other that much stronger as far as mana production is concerned. We have both colors. Plains, Forest, both colors is great. We also have a Fierce Empath, which is going to allow us to fetch up some of our bigger creatures early on. So, obvious play is going to start off here. Forest is going to come down, followed by a second land into Overgrown Battlement. Usually you want to make the play with the Plains first, as opposed to GWPost. GWPost is great for the life gain, but usually you want to hold on to it as long as possible. If I don't get a third land here, I would put it into play. You want to hold it as long as possible. You want to look for other cloud posts and stuff. You want to get those in play first, so you get the most life gain as possible off the GWPosts. So Forest comes down into Island and puts down Coiling Oracle. A little uncertain at this point. There are a couple of people who I know try Simic control. I do myself in casual formats. So I wasn't really sure what he was getting at here. Land War Elves does come down. It does turn out to be an Elf strategy, which I think plays against me a little bit, my unfamiliarity with the format. So here you go. Put a plains into play. I'm sorry, a forest into play. And if you're familiar with the land counts here, let's do it real quick. You get 3 lands in play. Now, what you want to do first is obviously play this Overgrown Battlement, because by playing this, you're going to get an extra play out of this turn. By putting down this Overgrown Battlement, now you've given yourself 3 available mana, and you can play the Fierce Empath. If you use this 3 mana to either cycle the Tusker or play the Empath, you're not going to have extra mana for the Overgrown Battlement. So, by putting the Battlement down first, we get 3 mana off the second Battlement, which has lost its Summoning Sickness due to being played last turn, and we can get this Empath into play on this turn. Empath is more important here. We have plenty of land available to us because we do have the 2 Battlements giving us extra mana. So we are going to play that and look for either a Herd or the Crusher. Now, I was thinking at this point in time, I'm thinking Elves. I did tell you it is Elves, so I went with Crusher, and I figured my thought process here is I can get the Crusher in, I can use the Annihilator ability, he'll start sacrificing off Elves, and that'll decrease the importance of certain spells like Well-Wisher and stuff like that, where the ability gets more powerful with each Elf in play. This was actually a flawed strategy, and you'll see why in a minute. But just keep that in mind. So he is fetching out some lands. Usually the red mana is a finisher, so I'm glad to have this Reap and Sow. Things like I've seen players use things like Rolling Thunder in order to finish us off. I've seen some turn it into a Storm deck. You'll see he's actually using none of the above, but we'll get to that in a minute. So, at this point in time, with these each tapping out for 4 mana, I have plenty of land. I do put the GWPost down first, and I know I just talked about you want to wait till the last second. In any other circumstance, I would want to put the Cloudpost down before the GWPost, because that would give me 2 life off this GWPost when I finally got into play. But I'm in a situation here where I get 4 mana off these battlements, and by having the GWPost in play, it gives me the extra 4 I need to play this Crusher on this turn, which is great. You see, we are in turn 4 and getting out the Olamog's Crusher, which is a fantastic play. That's what decks like this and Post and Green Post and all, that's exactly what they're looking for, is big plays like that. Some more Elves come down, drawing cards off Coiling Oracles and Visionaries. This is one of the big problems here, Timberwatch Elf, that pumps a creature up, +1/+1 for each Elf in play, basically. So we get another Empath, and I think what I went for here, Crusher is going to attack first. This gets me kind of a basic idea of what my opponent's strategy is going to be against this Annihilator ability. I don't have any critical plays for the first main phase, so I am going to wait until the second before I make the plays. Like I said, it gives me a chance to evaluate what my opponent's considering. It looked pretty good. He did, as I expected, use the Crusher's ability and sacrifice off Elves. So it killed off 2 Elves, and I'm thinking, okay, the Crusher is a great strategy for this. I have the other Fierce Empath. I can use it later on to get a second Crusher. I'm not in any state right now to really need it. He's only got 3 cards in hand, and as long as he doesn't get into Distant Melody, I'm pretty good. So what I decide to do here is I'm going to use the Reap and Sow and Entwine ability. I really wanted to use it, I said a lot of times I will use it for just fetching a land unless I have no other plays. Here I did have other plays available to me, but I wanted to really entwine this to get rid of this red mana. That way I figure if he has anything in his hand that's going to finish me off or do any kind of real damage because of that red mana, it's gone from the table and no longer an option to him. So a bit of an odd play here. I do go for GWPost. I was looking to kind of beef up my life a little bit. I think, again, a bit of a misplay there. It's not really important. It's just by playing this GWPost, I'm not getting as much life gain off it as I probably could. It does give me this opportunity, though, to get this Fierce Empath into play, which is very important to me. I really wanted to get this other Crusher into my hand, and I will play it on the next turn. The only thing I really wish about that Crusher, especially in a game like this, is that it had haste, because that really would have balanced things out. I think my strategy was okay to play these Crushers as a means to try and force him to sacrifice off Elves, but I think what really failed me here is the fact that I got this Crusher and it has to wait an extra turn. I can play it next turn, but it's got to wait another turn after that before it can actually attack. So things aren't good here. He puts out Llanowar Elves, and he does have the Distant Melody, which is going to suck. He is going to draw 6 cards and basically fill up his hand. He has mana available to him because of these Llanowar Elves. Not looking good for me at this point in time. So he attacks with his Nettle Sentinel, and at this point in time, I have a couple options available to me. I could chump block with one Empath, or I could chump block with both. If I do both, there is a chance that I could trade the two for the Sentinel, which I would personally consider to be a triumph. But there's also the Timberwatch Elf that is in play, and he has the ability to use that. I think that the play here is to get this in. I think forcing him to tap that out, it gives him less opportunity. He is going to have 2 mana available to him, and with the elves, a lot of times you don't need lands to get elves into play. You have the ability to tap an elf to gain mana. So my thought process was, well, even if I get him to at least tap out the Timberwatch Elf to save the Sentinel, what it's going to do is give him 1 less elf to tap and kind of stall his mana a little bit more. And here it is. The Rangers is the guy that he needs to get the elves to tap for mana. I really, the Sentinel is one of the biggest pieces to this in conjunction with the Rangers because of the fact that it untaps and it allows him to continuously get that extra mana source into play. So he's going to take a lot of time here to tap out creatures and get more elves into play. Luckily for me, he only got 3 more into play, but that could be all he needs. And here's where my Crusher strategy starts to fall apart. So at this point in time, he's got more than enough elves. He's got the important pieces available to him. He's got the Rangers here, and he's got himself the Sentinel. And these are kind of the big parts. Even the Priest here, the Priest is going to it's going to provide him with a lot of extra mana. So when he's sitting here with 5 lands, all of those lands basically useless to him. He could sit here and sacrifice, this could be Annihilator 5 for all that matters. He could get rid of all of these lands and it's not going to matter to him because he's going to generate all the mana he needs at this point in the game off his creatures. So this is where the Annihilator ability really starts to suck. I'm attacking, he can choose to either take the 8 damage and go to 4, and he's still good, or he can simply chump block and not take any damage off it. So he's going to continue to be able to sacrifice lands, not really lose anything but 1 creature if he actually chooses to. You see here he does decide to take the 8 life, and this is, again, where things are really starting to fall apart for me. So I use crop rotation. I am going to find GWPost at this point in time. I'm kind of reaching for straws. Go for Cloud Post. But, it's this thing. I've realized my mistake at this point in the game. I know now that he can just start sacrificing lands to these Crushers, and it's not going to hurt him that much. So both of those guys are coming down. Really not going to make a difference. They're going to be a decent chump block. He's still hitting land drops, which is great for him because, again, it provides more fodder. He now has 4 lands. It's going to basically cancel out both of these Crushers and their Annihilator abilities. You'll see in a second, not even going to really matter in the end, but he continues to play more creatures and generate more mana. I'll do my best to skip through this as best I can. You see he taps out the Priest and he gets this whole ton of green mana just stacked up right there. These are like key targets if you're playing any kind of control deck. You want to look out for these Priests and the Rangers. Even the Sentinels in most cases are going to be big trouble for you. So he's got all this land built up, and he's going to sit there and just continue to cast a whole bunch of creatures until he gets into... Is this not going to progress? Alright, we'll just hit play real quick. Alright, so he's playing more creatures. More creatures. Oh, there it was. Okay, so he finally shows it is Roar of the Crowd. That's the card I was thinking of. This is the card he's using. It's not as opposed to Rolling Thunder, which I, again, have seen. And this does damage to choose a creature type. Roar of the Crowd deals damage to target creature or player equal to the number of permanents you control of the chosen type. So, he did significant damage to me there, despite the fact that I had gained some extra life off GWPosts. And now he's got an opportunity. He's just going to attack with all his creatures. The best I can do here is block with 3. And even blocking 3, he's going to be able to get through 3 other creatures. And then he's still got 1 Timberwatch Elf that is untapped, and it's going to provide him with more than enough power on a creature to finish me off. So, yep, there you go. So that is game 2. Let's pull up the 3rd game right here. Alright, this is another kind of interesting hand that I decided to keep and perhaps shouldn't have. Hand is very land heavy. I am sitting on green mana, which is great. It's the one kind of motivating factor to actually keeping a hand like this. Overgrown Battlement can stall for time, so I will get the turn 1 Glimmer Post into play. I'm sorry, turn 1 Cloud Post into play. And I can get that Overgrown Battlement in. Now I top deck into Crop Rotation, which is great for me. I can use it now. I can get another Cloud Post in, so next turn I will be able to, if I wanted to, have 2 Cloud Posts in play. And it's also thinning out my deck a little bit. Now my opponent, obviously playing Hexproof, throws out a Ledge Walker and a Slippery Boggle. Going to be a little bit of trouble. Basically all of the white spells in my deck are going to be completely useless. He's going to be able to get through. Something to keep in mind, we don't really have anything for blocking flyers, so these Ledge Walkers are going to be trouble, and he's going to be able to pile all of his enchantments on there, and I won't be able to do anything as far as blocking those is concerned, even, chump blocking. So I have an opportunity again to get the double Cloud Post into play, but what I really want to do here is I put down the Forest so I can get my Overgrown Battlement in. This is ultimately going to give me better mana and a little bit extra blocking ability. It's going to stop the Slippery Boggle from getting through, and it's going to, unless he plays any extra enchantments, do just 1 damage off the Ledge Walker. So that comes down. The white mana in these matchups, the Hexproof deck is always used for things like Armadillo Cloak, which is very important to get rid of. So whenever you find yourself with a Reef so definitely target those as soon as possible. So put down a Cloud Post, and this gives me enough mana. I am going to cycle a Tusker. There could be a decent argument made for putting that Tusker into play. The deck is very light on creatures, and even that Tusker can be a decent body to swing through some of these 1/1s. But because of these Ledge Walkers, I really wanted to kind of dig through my deck a little bit and try and find a Crusher as soon as possible. That Annihilator ability is kind of your best control option, because of the fact that it gives you, a chance to force your opponent to sacrifice something that you might find troublesome, he might find beneficial. So, sucks for me, I do draw into yet another additional land off that. He is going to finally tap out, play his first enchantment, which is the Ancestral Mask. Luckily for me, it doesn't give the creature extra power or toughness until there is more than 1 enchantment on the field. So he is still going to be able to swing for 1. Again, something to keep in mind is it's enchantments on the field, not just your opponent's side of the field. So any white enchantments I play at this point in time are going to hurt me more than help me. So I start out, before playing a land, I am going to do the Prism so I can find out what my draw is. Now I draw into a Hobble, and this is what I decided to do. I am going to tap out, put the Hobble into play, and draw an extra card. Now this does, as you see, make him a 3/3, but I was okay with this. I really, at this point in time, you see I have 6 land cards in hand, and that's really bad. What I wanted to do is find something else, just anything else at this point in time that was not a land, to put me at, just give me some kind of edge in this game. I also have 2 Glimmer Posts available to me, so what I wanted to do, I'm like, okay, I can take some damage. I can take some damage off this Cloud Posts. Take some damage off this Ledge Walker and get these Cloud Posts into play, and then when I get these Glimmer Posts in, it'll give me extra life, and I can really get things going there. So down comes Utopia Sprawl, and this is going to bump up his Ledge Walker to a 5/5. Now, another target for Entwine on the Reap and Sow is going to be absolutely this enchanted forest. Not only is that going to take him back a mana, but it is also going to clear another enchantment off the field. You see I did manage to top deck into it. So I am going to be able to, like I said, take that enchantment off the field and get rid of his land at the same time. Very beneficial. Now his Ledge Walker is back down to a 3/3. Still, if you get into a second one here, the key target is going to be that plane, so you can prevent the Armadillo Cloak from coming down. So, taking some damage there, but that's okay. I do have all 4 Cloud Posts into play, so I can start gaining life now. Going up here, back to 14. Pretty substantial to gain 5 life off that, and I know next turn I'm going to be gaining 6. Reap and Sow is going to come down yet again, like I said, and target that Plains. And I'm going to use it to get another Glimmer Post, because at this point in time I have white mana basically off the Prism. I have more than enough green mana because I do have a Battlement into play, and I have all of my Cloud Posts. Like I said, I was taking some early damage, so the Glimmer Posts are there to really balance things out. I am going to search that off right away and kind of get my life. Look, I'm right back to 20, right where we are. I have plenty of mana available to me. It's like the whole game set, the whole game board reset, and I am in a pretty good place now. Another Ledge Walker comes down, and these are guys that are troublesome and I cannot block, but he's at 2 lands and only 1 card in hand, and I think I'm pretty well set for this game. Faith's Fetters is just going to kind of sit there for a while and do nothing. Draw into crop rotation, which is great. I can use that to get GWPost number 3 and 4. Fourth one was in my hand, so I'm going to put that down first. It really doesn't matter what order you go through here because you are going to get the 7 and then 8 life off that. So now all of a sudden I've gone from down to 9 life to up to 31, and I still have a blocker on the board for his non-ledge walkers. He does decide to just concede here. I'm assuming he got nothing to help him out. 2 lands is okay for at least the hexproof deck I'm familiar with. There's a lot of enchantments that sit at the 2 land level. I'm guessing he just didn't have any of those, which definitely sucks. It's a pretty bad draw for him. But so I managed to kind of sneak out yet another win with the not so great land-based hand. This is third game, so definitely check out, again, I will put links in the bottom in the description here as to the recap, which I'll record in just a second, and also you can see me putting together this deck and see what it really entails. So hope you enjoyed it, guys.